Hey everybody, this is your ratio table equations video notes. So make sure you have your notes in front of you. Here we go. You're gonna be given a ratio table. So something that looks like this. And what we have to determine is how do I get from one side to another. So let's remember something here. Let's remember the first is the x value and the second is the y if we were going to graph it. So what I'm saying to you is how do we get from the x side to the y side? Or how do we get from the y side to the x side? How do we get from one column to the other? So here's a little, just an example of what this could be. It says the distance that Johnny Speed Racer pedals his bike is 1 mile every 3 minutes. Create an equation that describes this relationship. Okay, we're using the ratio table. So how do I get from 1 to 3? Well, I think we would all agree that 1 times 3 gets us 3, right? Let's just make sure that works for all of the ratio table. From 2 times 3, does that get us 6? Yes. 5 times 3, does that get us 15? Yes. And 10 times 3, does that get us 30? Yes, it does. So what we're saying is the left side times 3 gets us the right side. So how would we write that? Well, I could use d for distance, the letter d. In our case in math, it's a variable d. So d times 3 gets me t for time. Okay? I would like this written a better way. I know if I smush the 3 and the d together, that shows me multiplication. That's a little more efficient, so I like this way better. Either one is perfectly fine. Also, you could write d times 3, like we've said in the past, like so. That's great, but what if we want to go the other way? What if we want to start with the time and go to the minutes? So how do we get from 3 to 1? How do we get from 6 to 2? Well, it's just the inverse of this down here, isn't it? So we're going to divide. So instead of multiply by 3, we're going to divide by 3, the inverse, right? So 3 divide 3 gives us 1. That works. 6 divide 3 gets us 2. 15 divide 3 gets us 5. And 30 divided 3 gets us 10. So how are we going to show that? We're going to use our t, and we're going to divide it by 3 to get us to d. So t divide 3 gets us d. And I would like to show this a better way. I would say as a fraction t over 3 equals d, because remember, dividing and a fraction mean the same thing. If something's a fraction, that means to divide. Remember, you can always rewind and go back if that was too fast or doesn't make sense to you. Flip. Okay, so we're going to do the first two together, and number 4 and 5 will be on your own. So here we go. Number 2 says, what is the rule for the following table? So if we just, you don't have to flip the paper, but notice that we're saying that these are equations. Whoops, sorry about that. That these are equations. What we wrote here, I don't know why this is going crazy on me. These are equations that we wrote. And we can also refer to them as rules. So the rule is, to get from d to t is times 3. That's the rule. It works every time is kind of what we're saying. So, let's see if we can answer this question. What is the rule for the following table? So, basically, what does that mean? How do I get from A to B in this case? Well, how do I get from 0 to 0? That doesn't really help us very much. How do I get from 3 to 9? So in your head or to yourself, you can figure that out pretty easily, right? How do I get from 6 to 18? So take a second and see if you can show us down here how I get from A to B. Pause and go ahead and try it. So I'm saying to myself, 3 times 3 gets me 9. 6 times 3 gets me 18. 9 times 3 gets me 27. 12 times 3 gets me 36. So I'm going to say A times 3, or 3A, equals B. I hope you put something like that. You could have said 3 times A equals B. You could have said the other way around. A times 3 equals B. Any of those work just fine. Okay, let's take that same information and let's start with B and go back to A. Okay, so what I'm asking you is, how do I get from B back to A? So pause and try that one. So I know that if I want to get from 9 to 3, it's divide 3. If I want to get from 18 to 6, it's divide 3. By the way, I'm just doing the inverse over here, right? So if I'm going to divide 3, my mind, I'm saying B divide 3 is going to get me A. So I like to write it like that. It's a fraction. Could I write B divide 3 equals A? Yes, of course. A horse is a horse. So we have 2 answers here. Okay, so the stuff in the green is one of the answers, and the stuff in the red is another. Okay, number 3 says, which choice shows how T and W relate? So now we got a multiple choice problem. If I look at this ratio table, I'm asking myself, how do I get from the T column to the W column? How do I get there? Okay, so you should be asking yourself that same thing. Or, if I'm at the W column, how do I get back here? Well, look over here. All these say W equals something. So basically what that's saying is, what do I do with T to get me W? What do I do with 2 to get me 12? What do I do with 4 to get me 24? And remember, it's got to be the same for all of them. These are all equivalent. So why don't you hit pause and see if you can pick one of these choices? So if I look at this, I know from 2 to 12 is times 6. 4 to 24 is times 6. 5 times 6 is 30. 10 times 6 is 60. So I'm multiplying by 6 every time. So which one of those choices shows me multiply by 6? The slash mark shows me divide by 6. That's the inverse. This tells me to subtract 10, which doesn't make any sense. I guess 12 minus 10 is 2, but that isn't really what we're doing here. This says to add 10, which I guess is the other way. Multiply by 6. 6 and T smushed together tells me to multiply. Therefore, D for doorknob is our choice. The last 2 are yours to do on your own, and that is your ratio table equations video.